BEOWULF, Age of Heroes.
Hello again, it's John Hodgson here with episode 5 of the BEOWULF Age of Heroes podcast. I'll be chatting this week with Jacob Rogers, my co-conspirator in the design, writing and so on of BEOWULF Age of Heroes. We are going to be discussing the equipment chapter. It's a cheeky little episode. It's a nice 20-minute discussion. Now, at the time of recording, you can pre-order BEOWULF Age of Heroes on the Handiwork Games web store, which is handiwork.games, or you can grab it at Drive-Thru RPG in PDF. We just released the first adventure since the release of the core book, called Horror at Harrogate by Marco Raffaella, and that's a really great little adventure. You can grab that in PDF right now. So by all means, head over to Drive-Thru, search up BEOWULF. You'll find it there. Right, on with the show.
BEOWULF, Age of Heroes.
So here we are again. We are now on, I do believe we are on episode 5.
Wow.
I know, who would have thought it? So now we're diving in. Don't laugh at myself. What? We're diving into equipment and ships. And there's some really great stuff in this section. This is right up my alley as a bit of a history nerd. So why don't you start us off, Jacob, with the beginning of the equipment and ships section?
Excellent. All right. So we introduce it first off with our wealth and currency, which just in brief, we have pounds of silver, shillings and pence, and we go and do a little bit of a breakdown on that, but we're not going to bore you with the specific details. That is just for if you want to play out a scene and you've got a certain amount of coins, we want to make sure you know that there's 40 shillings in a pound and 6 pence in a shilling. So nothing special.
It's not a big deal, is it? Within the setting, it's a big sort of gift-giving economy, and the whole idea of ring givers as, you know, the sort of kings and queens of the setting rule by gift giving in return for service. So there is coinage, definitely. This is historically true, but it's not something you need to worry about too much. I don't think it's there when you need it, but it's not. You know, heroes aren't bothered about a handful of coins.
Yeah, heroes don't really focus on that. But if you want to send a follower, you know, into town, whatever town means in this setting, yes, we give you enough detail to work with.
Yeah, and pounds of silver is a major deal within the setting because, as we will come to later, a lot of the things that your hero will spend money on are measured in pounds of silver, and pounds of silver can come in all kinds of different forms of treasure and decorated objects and art objects and trade goods and all that kind of thing. They're all measured in pounds of silver, which is a nice kind of, what would be the word? Coarse grain economy that's quite quick to deal with. I'm a big fan of that stuff, that at the end of an adventure you will do some totting up of how much treasure you've got and how many outgoings you've got, and you can deal with it in the biggest unit pretty much. You might end up with a bit of change at the end, but nothing too much to worry about. But I'm skipping ahead as ever into other sections. So we should, this bit leads very swiftly into war gear, which is a bit different, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. This is the, I guess, the biggest thing that you'll spend money on. So we've got it right up in front. So we break it down into armor and weapons. And one of the wonderful things about this is that we've got each individual piece of armor illustrated by the wonderful John Hodgson. And we also have all of the details for that. So you can kind of flip through the catalog, pick what you want, and you've got all your stat information. But also, if you're the GM and you're sitting down to make 6 different NPCs, we do have a table at the end that shows you breakdown of everything all together. So
yeah, I love the idea of being able to sort of pore over an equipment section and you can see what everything looks like. You're not just dealing with a row of numbers. I think that's really cool. And hey, maybe I'm just showing my bias of being really interested in early medieval war gear here, but I just think it's really interesting. And yeah, we've got there's some differences, aren't there, from standard 5e, We don't have any plate armor because that is yet to be invented in the setting, in the sort of half remembered mythic setting of what is broadly 5th or 6th century Northern Europe.
Right.
But we have some different types of mail,
Right.
different lengths of mail, pretty much, isn't it? About whether it's got sleeves or it comes down to your knees and all that kind of thing.
Yep.
And they're pretty much, we've tinkered a little bit with armor class because to give the full spread of armor that you would expect within the 5e game, we've added a little bit to some things, given more, heavier suits of mail and so on to get up to those high levels. But bigger change actually is helmets, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because, like John mentioned, we want to have that full numeric range, to make it 5e compatible. We go ahead and we'll give you an armor class bonus if you wear a helm.
Yeah, and I mean, this is super appropriate to the era because so many, and again, I'm going to keep stumbling around going, it's not a historical game in as much as it's a mythic game, but it is based firmly in history, and so many warriors in the period we're trying to evoke, their only piece of armor would be a helmet.
Yeah,
so it needed
helmet
to be
and shield sometimes. Yep.
Yeah, helmet and shield, and those needed to be effective within the system. You couldn't in standard 5e, that wouldn't make an awful lot of sense, just a helmet and a shield. But you can do a lot more. You can do a lot more. He gives you a much better AC.
Right.
Within Beowulf, just a helmet and shield is a little bit more practical.
Yep. Yeah. And also to kind of standardize on things, we have properties for all of the items, including the noisy property, which goes back to in traditional 5e, you have certain armor types that give you disadvantage on stealth. The noisy property basically replicates that in a nice, clean way. And then we have some other properties like robust, where we have more details on the weapons, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So a robust helm is able to stand up to more damage than a regular helm.
Yeah, because we wanted to really take advantage of this duet play business where you have one GM and one player, and that's allowed us to work in a few more properties for weapons and armor, and they're all kind of interdependent, aren't they? So that because we've boosted up shields and helmets a little bit, we've also given some weapons, as is era appropriate, the ability to circumvent and destroy helms and shields, and some helmets and shields are more resistant than others to being cloven asunder, as I might say in elf talk.
Yep.
So there's a little bit of sort of codependency there. I suppose that takes us into weapons really quite neatly, doesn't it? Shields. We got shield properties like battering, so you can actually attack with your shield. That's pretty cool. I like that.
Yep.
I think that's pretty much armor covered. Lots of different types of helmet, which is unusual as a historical aside that there are only 4 Anglo-Saxon helmets discovered in the archaeological record, but they do span quite a broad bunch of types. So we've kind of taken advantage of that. But yeah, so weapons, these are all very era appropriate, and yeah, they have a bunch of new properties, don't they?
Yep. Some of them are the kind of standard 5e ones, but we've added on additional properties as appropriate for them. And again, we get a individual illustration of each of the weapons along with the stat line, everything you need when you're making the character, and then we also have a summation table at the end. But we have the splintering property, which relates with shields. The hooking property, you can actually have a weapon that you can use to pull a shield aside and open up an opportunity for somebody else to attack. And of course, it is primarily oriented towards a single player, but you have your followers, so they might be able to take advantage of it. Or if you're playing with multiple heroes, that might also be something you do. I
was talking. There's a friendly group. There's a fellow you know, actually, Jacob, Steve, who he worked with us
Yep.
on Adventures in Middle-earth years ago.
Yep.
They're playing a multiplayer game of Beowulf at the moment, and they're all terrified. They haven't given themselves many more hit points. That's one of the options for multiplayer games. And they're all terrified of Daneaxes at the moment.
As they should be.
Daneaxes are a kind of axe, yeah, which should be. There's a couple of things to say actually about Daneaxes. Daneaxes, this is an interesting example. The sort of long two-handed axe, sort of commonly known as the Daneax, historically doesn't really appear until sometime later, like right at the end of the early medieval era. But it's such an iconic thing that I'm quite happy to put it in as something that storytellers who are telling a story of their ancestors would push it back through time to make the story really exciting. You know, it's that kind of thing. We cast a broad net through the early medieval period. If you're someone who's a real specialist in this, you might be frowning at hearing me talk about Daneaxes as two-handed weapons, but that's our kind of rationale. It's cool. It's a game about legends and heroes, so I think we're well within our rights to draw, you know, from a few centuries of equipment.
Right.
But yeah, in this game, I was talking about in the game that Steve's playing in, they're absolutely terrified of Danex because Daneaxes, they do a lot of damage, and they also splinter shields.
Yes.
So if you don't down a foe who's got a splintering shield, he can really mess you up.
Yep.
Or she might really mess you up if you look at the artwork in the game. Yeah. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Yep. There we go. And then we've got another one of our favorites next, the Francisca. And naming that beast was a process.
Yeah, wasn't it? Because it's an iconic throwing axe of the period, you know, associated with the Franks, and the Francisca. It has the sound of a very Latin word, and us wanting this to be the sort of ancestor time of the historical Anglo-Saxons. Latin words kind of, you know, they're more reserved for the church really than the talk of warriors. But we'd to and froed on that, and I was being very belligerent about it, as I recall, that I didn't want it to. Oh no, who was it? It might have been David who was saying we shouldn't call it, you know, this Latin term.
Right.
I can't remember. And then I was lucky enough to be in Helsinki as part of Ropocon, and was in the National Museum of Finland, and I've got a photo, this will appear in the YouTube version of this. There's a photo of a Francisca head. Obviously the wooden haft is long gone, but they spelled it with a K at the end, which is a very Finnish kind of thing. Finnish absorbs words by kind of, I want to say Finnanizing. What the heck? It's not, talk about making up words. They spell it with a K instead of a C, and it just looks really kind of, you know, early Germanic.
Right.
And you go, wow, there we go.
Yep.
That'll do it.
Yep.
So that you know, that's a nice little story about why the Francisca is spelt the way it is.
Beowulf, Age of Heroes.
Oh, look, it even says in the book, it's a fearsomely specialised, having no use as a tool, because the haft of the Francisca throwing axe is generally bowed in a way that would make it not so great for chopping wood, and the head is quite a curved, specialised metal head. So yeah, in the book it says it has no use as a tool, so the carrying of a brace of Francisca demonstrates murderous intent or ability. Every weapon has a little bit of setting stuff with it, which is another thing that I think is very cool. Every piece of equipment your hero carries, or an enemy might be carrying, tells a little bit of a story about who they are, how they view battle, and so on.
Right.
And that's very important for stories, right?
Yep, absolutely. And one of the other things we've failed to mention so far when talking about weapons is that the spear. Spear is the most common weapon of the era, of course, and we reflect that in game by making a spear absolutely easy to have. Everybody's got one. The followers have a couple spares. You can automatically have a spear just for asking for it. There's no need to go and buy a spear. It's automatically available to you.
Yeah, it's a nice mix, isn't it? Because again, for the duet play that you don't have, when you have a party of characters, you can, as GM, you can reduce your players' access to equipment and so on, and it be a nice piece of sort of negotiation, role playing, and so on as you divvy up what you've got between you. But if you've only got one player, it becomes a little bit less fun to reduce the kind of equipment the player has. I mean, yeah, it's a perfectly fine thing to put into an adventure, but you have to be mindful. There's only one player, so they can't ask their friend, or they're asking an NPC that an NPC follower who they likely control. So to short circuit all of that nonsense, being able to just, as a hero, ask for a spear and to be given one by somebody in your warband seems good sense and very atmospheric for the era.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a cool thing. What else have we got in here? Just having a quick little look through this spread. Sayaxes, depending on how you want to pronounce that. Some people just pronounce that sax. Sax. That's knives and so on, have a very specialist shape unique to historical Anglo-Saxons. They're pretty cool.
Yep.
We'll have, again, YouTube version of this will have some visuals.
Yep. Very good. Yep.
What was the other one I was going to mention? It's gone out of my mind now. Oh, angons. An angon is a specific type of throwing spear. It's a little bit like a sort of Anglo-Saxon pilum with a long iron head that bends over. It's meant to pierce a shield and then bend once it's gone through the shield, basically rendering the shield useless. So we've got them. They're good.
Yep. Very good. Let's see if we got anything else. Got the winged spears.
Yeah,
Or
they're
spear.
cool. Yeah, again, yeah.
Very cool.
Hooking shields and so on. Yep, that's all good.
Yep.
There's plenty there to dig into.
Yep, absolutely. And then we've got our properties for the war gear. So everything that we've just shown you, and then, we've given you some in-world information about. We go ahead and break down into 5e terms for the various different properties. And then we also, just like about everything else in the game, we have gifts and burdens that you can assign to a piece of war gear. So you can improve something by giving it a gift, or perhaps the GM is going to tell you, well, you can't really find anything of particular quality here, but you do find such and such, but it's broken, or it's made out of inferior materials, or it's extra weight. That sort of stuff.
There's some good stuff in here, isn't there? It's been a while since I've been in this section. That's good. Deadly sharp gift. That's great. So you do critical hits on 19 or 20.
Yep. Excellent.
Oh, hang on. No, yeah. Oh, one more.
One more,
right.
yeah. So
one more die
depends on how
face.
you
Yeah,
work
it's
it.
giving you a crit.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, really good. And yeah, inferior materials for armor. So when it receives a critical hit, it's considered destroyed.
Yep.
Or I could see some fun with that, taking away everyone's equipment and giving them bad equipment.
Right.
That's good. Yep.
Yep.
Only in a fun way, though. Not in an adversarial way, in a fun way.
Yep.
Right.
Very
You can
good.
hear players across the land rolling their eyes at that kind of chat. Cool. And then, what do we have after that? We've got normal gear.
Yeah, we got into some normal gear, which again, this is just if it becomes relevant because of the scenario, or because of the fact that you're interested in zooming in on a follower for a little while, and to kind of skip ahead, we also allow follower journaling. So you might sit down as a player and write a little story about what your follower's been up to, and that can unlock some additional advancement on the follower. So you might use this information for some background writing, as opposed to most of the time the hero is not going to get stuck in on how many pence or shillings they're spending on rations or regular clothes or anything like that. But the information is here for you to use if it's interesting and part of the scenario.
Yeah, because of course, as is covered on one of these pages, the hero always has a ship, and it's reasonable to assume there are supplies of things on the ship.
Yep.
It's not the kind of setting where if you've brought your rope or not is a really big deal, because you can send someone back to the ship to get some rope. It's that kind of, and we've had some really nice times in games with this where it just it's a different kind of challenge, if you know what I mean. It's not an item by item resource management kind of setting, and that's quite nice. It's nice to play that way sometimes. Obviously, other times it's nice to play one torch at a time. But this moves, Beowulf moves a little bit away from that, just with, there's almost a lack of scarcity of basic equipment because you've got a ship and a crew and followers. So between them, emptying out their pockets, or belt pouches, they'll probably be able to turn up most useful items.
Yeah. You are a big hero. It is, and again, we say this a lot, but it is kind of a story time sort of adventure setting. It's not, again, if you go in and you're counting rations, you're counting torches, that's certainly a way to play. And if that's what you find interesting, great, go for it. But the general assumption is the SCOP is retelling the story, and very few adventure stories get into the details of how many pennies you spent on, a particular item. So.
Yeah, right. I think there's, when you're writing scenarios, I think it's cool to put in sequences where scarcity of a particular piece of equipment becomes, a pivotal part of it. But it's not for when you're playing a hero, that's less. It's not going to make you feel heroic if you're constantly counting basic equipment. So we just don't really do it, unless it's important. And I tell you what, that's probably what we have to say about equipment at this point. We give you, there's a little bit more information about general prices within society and the kind of services that are available, crafting and so on, livestock and all that kind of thing. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the equipment section, he says, with one eye on the clock. Want to keep these quite tight.
Yes.
Got to edit together visuals.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a neat little section. I'm very happy with. I like the way that war gear and arms and armor kind of interact a little bit. That almost rock paper scissors with smashing weapons on shields and shields being a bit more effective than they are in other iterations of 5e. There's some good stuff to dig into there, I think.
Excellent.
Cool.
Excellent. All right.
Nice.
Okay, cool. Well, I think that's a section there.
Beowulf, Age of Heroes.
And that's it. That's the end of episode 5. Nice delve into that equipment section there. So be sure to check out Beowulf on the Handiwork Games website. That's www.handiwork.games. You can check us out on DriveThruRPG, where you can get the free introductory scenario, The Hermit Sanctuary. Totally free, full-length scenario. It's got loads of battle maps, all sorts of cool stuff with it too. We've got our new adventure, Horror Harrogate, which is out now. Be sure to grab that. We just released for Kickstarter backers the first digital pack. We're doing one of these a month for our backers. Eventually the material will be available to everyone else, but it's just for backers at the moment. And that had loads of cool stuff like battle maps and stuff like that, some VTT tokens, 6-page PDF that I've written about using fetch quests in Beowulf. Loads of cool stuff. If you're not a backer, you'll see that appear at some point on our drive-through site. So yeah, check us out. We've got all sorts of cool stuff on the website. Miniatures, tokens, all kinds of things. See you next time. Bye for now.
Beowulf, Age of Heroes.